Maddog Hall. I'm the Executive Director of Linux, and I'm here today to talk about making money and saving money with free software. And more importantly, how you should price your work in order to make a living with free software. In the first years of free software, I would go to a conference like this and tell people about the glories of using free software, the wonderfulness of looking at the source code, the control that you would have over your life, and how you would not be a software slave. But you all know this now. You know what free software could do for you, and you would like to have a job in free software where you can make a living. And what I have found is that people are approaching this from the wrong direction. And I hope that today I can give you some pointers as to how you can create a job that will give you a good living writing free software. So the first thing, oops, oh, I have to turn this on. Add these electrical devices. No, it's still not working. Let me see here. Oh, there it goes. No, it's still not working. Give me a second here. Could mean my battery's dead. Oh, there we go. Okay. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that there's no magic here. You know, creating a job, doing a business takes a lot of hard work. And with free software, if you want to have a business out of it, you first must be a good business person. So when we talk about free software, of course we're talking about software libre, where we say free as in freedom, not free as in beer. And unfortunately, a lot of people think of free software as free as in beer. And a lot of the things that we do can end up being more or less free as in beer. But the problem with that is that there is nothing in this world which is truly free. We were sitting at the lunch table today and we had some water in a plastic bottle. You pay a lot of money for that water. But you could say, oh, I don't need to. I can go to the tap and I can get water from the tap. But somebody built the pipe to bring that water to you. Somebody chlorinated the water or cleaned it so that it would be fit for you to drink. And then when the water goes down the drain, somebody has to treat the sewage so that we don't pollute our streams and lakes. So even the water is not free. You drive a car and you put exhaust into the air, and we put a lot of things in the gasoline to help prevent putting lead into the air or polluting the air. So even the air is not free. Even your mother's love is not free. She will say to you, if you love me, you'll take out the garbage. See, there's a condition there. And Richard Stallman, in the 25 years I've known him, has never even one time said that you should not be able to charge for your software. You should not be able to make a living writing software. He has just said that after the software is written, it should be libre, free. And there's a reason for that. It protects the customer. So this is a business like any other. You have to know what your market is, who your customer is, who you're going to be selling your code to. Even if you give your code away, you should know what that is. A lot of times it's easy for us because one of the reasons why people write free software is for their own use. And consequently, they can use themselves as an example of their customer. But this doesn't always work well. And what you should be thinking about is your total market. Not only you, but the other people who might be using your software later. If you write software that satisfies their itch also, then they may join your project. If your only itch that you satisfy is your own, well, then they may fork your project or start a different one and take it off in a different direction. You should know what your value added is. Notice I used the word value. It's very important. It's not cost, it's value. And who are going to be your competitors? Who are you going up against? This is important because you want to know how much better your solution is than theirs. You create a real business plan, and along with that, a marketing plan. How do you let people know about your project so that they can help you or they can buy it from you? And then a financial plan, and most importantly, a cash flow analysis. If you're going to start a business and you run out of money to keep it going, either A, your business goes bankrupt, or B, somebody called a venture capitalist comes in and takes it away from you. So you need to know that you've got enough money to get your project up to the point where it is self-sustaining. And finally, an exit strategy. Do you want to be doing this for the rest of your life? Or do you get the project going to the point where it's self-sustaining and then you go off and you do something else? Maybe you make enough money out of it that you can start the next great project. A good example of this was Mark Shuttleworth, where he started one company, got it going, sold it for a couple $100 million, and went off and started Ubuntu after he flew through space and went to Antarctica and a bunch of other things. So you should know what your exit strategy is. And maybe you're happy working on this for the rest of your life. Maybe you don't even ever want to retire. For example, the type of work I do, I could go until I'm senile. Some people think I'm there already. But after you're senile, you don't care anymore. You're somebody else's problem. And that's my exit strategy. So why do people write free software? We know all these things. We write free software to scratch our own itch. Or maybe we say that we're writing the free software so that other people can help us make it better. And therefore, we don't have to write as much of the code to scratch our itch. And every once in a while, somebody might say, hey, I'll pay you some money for your software, or maybe you can come and teach me about your software, or maybe I can use to pay you for making a little change to your software. And some people like writing software. I love writing software. Writing software is better than drugs. Because drugs take a little while to act, and sometimes later, oh yeah, okay. But when you compile that software program and you execute it and it works, oh, that's the adrenaline rush. That's really great, And it is better than drugs. And it doesn't have an after effect either. It's great. I mean, I had some drugs that, no, never mind. And a lot of people have a business model based on service. And what they want to do is to get their product into as many people's hands as possible and using it so that they can then charge them for some type of service or data or something like that. Now, why do people pay other people to write free software? Well, maybe they see that there's a piece of software that has almost everything they need, and they could wait until the developers who are writing it put that stuff in, which they may never do, or they could say, hey, I'll pay you a little bit of money if you'll make this change for me. Or maybe they find somebody who's outside the project, who's a good programmer, and they say, I'll pay you to make this change for me. And if these people are smart, they take that change and they put it back into the upstream pool so that the next time the software is released, that change will already be there and they don't have to pay for it again. So that's one reason. And they also do that because there's no real reason why they shouldn't share that software change with somebody else. maybe they don't have any direct competitors, and therefore this change to the software, doesn't have any effect on their competition. Well, maybe they do have some direct competitors, but this change to the software is not the thing that differentiates them from their competitors. We'll have an example of this later on. So they say, well, I'll make this change to the software, and it's even going to benefit my competitors, but that's okay. And they want a feature that's very unlikely to be written by somebody else. Or they can leverage off of other free software that's already been written, so they say the cost of doing this new feature is very low. And these are all reasons why people would pay somebody to write free software. Now, I often teach people or give examples by going back in time to when I was first starting with computing. That's not me. But that was one of the computers I used to work on, an IBM 360 computer. And that system right there required a 200-ton air conditioner and 3-phase electric power, and cost about $2.5 million US when the US dollar was worth a lot of money. And it had, it did 250,000 instructions per second and was generally known as a mainframe computer. But because the hardware was so expensive and the size of the memories so small, there wasn't really a market for shrink-wrap software. You didn't create software as a product. You created software as a service. You went out to somebody, you say, oh, you have a problem to solve, and I'm going to investigate that problem, and you write up a project plan, and you write the code, and they pay you for it. And the code then belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. They're the customer. They paid you for it. The code belongs to them. Today, when you buy a piece of Microsoft code, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them. And you only get the right to use it every once in a while on one computer, as long as you own it. And as soon as you give away that computer, you lose that right. So in 1980s, the hardware was becoming less expensive. Things like the Apple II was coming out and the IBM PC, personal computer. And people said that the price of hardware is dropping so rapidly, but the software is still expensive. So let's write it one time and then manufacture it like cookie cutters, like a product. Now, we're going through another nexus on this, another switch. And today, the hardware is becoming incredibly cheap. You can buy a Raspberry Pi for $35. You can buy an Arduino for $40. And it's just getting even cheaper and more powerful. And so I think we're going to again see going back to software as a service. Now, when I was a college student, I did sell software. I had what I called the beer economy. DECUS was a user group, and the users that belonged to it were scientists and engineers, business people, anything but the word programmer. You didn't have professional programmers back in those days. You had people who were trying to write programs to use this wonderful thing called the computer. In fact, there were no computer science degrees in 1969. If you wanted to do something with computers in college, you belonged to the physics department. You belonged to the electrical engineering department or the mathematics department. And you got a degree in those subjects with a minor in computers. It wasn't until about 1977 that a computer science degree actually happened. And I even had a professor tell me one time, Maddog, well actually back in those days I was called John. He said, "John, you will never be able to make a living as a professional programmer." I'm still trying to find out if he was right. But in any case, DECUS was an organization that had a bunch of users belonging to it, and they had a library of software that these users had written. And the library was quite complete, had a lot of different programs. Most of the programs would fit into computers that only had 4,000 bytes of memory. And you would send away for some of these programs, and it would cost $5 to get a program, a small program on paper tape, and a larger program, like an assembler, might cost $15. And you would send away through the mail, it would come through the mail, you get this. Now, $5 to a student back in those days was a lot of money. That was the equivalent of 10 pitchers of beer. And obviously an assembler, that's even more, that's 30 pitchers of beer. I mean, that's almost a day's worth of drinking. So what I would do is I would go through this catalog looking for great programs. I would send out the money, and then when I got the program in, I would review it. I'd say, "Oh, this is a great program." And then I would go to all of my friends and my roommates and say, "I'll make copies of this for you for only $1 US." The small programs. The big ones were $3 US. Well, I would go to the school store, get the paper tape, put it on my teletype, duplicate the tape, make 15, 20, 50 different copies, and I would sell it. And so at the end, I had paid back all of the money I had spent on the program. I paid back all the money I spent on the new paper tape. And the rest of the money I spent on beer. I think you can see I was quite successful. And in addition to all of that, I could sell training because a lot of my roommates had not taken the time to learn how to use these programs. I would teach them how to do it over a couple of beers. The problem with that method of training was after a while I could no longer remember how the program worked, so we had to end for the night. Now, here's the problem with mass production software, and the problem with any type of mass production. If you try and design something to fit the needs of every person, it's almost impossible. Let's take a coffee cup. You might have a coffee cup that you buy in a store for 2 or 3 reais. It's it's manufactured in a factory. It has a small handle, not big enough for your real hand. You have to hold it like this. And it only comes in this one color, white. And it's too small. I mean, a coffee cup, see, I come from the United States. We have coffee cups, you guys have coffee cups. So, I like a large coffee cup, a grande coffee cup. And you can't get that in the store. And then if you really want to have a nice coffee cup, sometimes they come with your name on it. And of course, I spell my name Jon, and you hardly ever find a coffee cup with that on it. Now the alternative is you go to somebody who is a craftsman, and the craftsman takes some clay and makes you a coffee cup of the right size with a nice handle. And they paint it the color you want, and they spell your name right. But you don't get it for just 3 reais. You might have to pay 10 reais, or 15 reais, or 50 reais. But it's worth it to you because that cup fits your need. The problem with mass production is that you typically only meet 70 to 90% of the needs of 70 to 80% of all the people. And when you do your multiplication, you find out that you're only meeting half of everybody's needs on average. And that's a very bad thing, because it means that half of the people in the world are suffering with a coffee cup that's too small, the wrong color, or their name is spelled wrong. So these are what we call commodity products. They are products that treat the world. And when I say commodity, here's another example. Can of corn. You go to the grocery store and there's these cans of corn on the shelf. And one of them may be a famous brand can of corn, and another one is a can of corn from the supermarket itself. And then you have a dented can of corn, but you're standing in front of these cans of corn, you're trying to decide which one to buy. They only are different by maybe a couple of cents, but you're staying there looking at them. And after a while, the manager from the store comes along and says, "Can I help you?" You say, "I'm trying to decide which can of corn to buy. And can I mix this can of corn with that one, or do I have to cook them in separate pots?" How many people do you think this can of corn would feed? About this time, the manager is calling over the security guard to throw you out of the store because you are an idiot and they don't want you in the store anymore. Because a can of corn is a commodity. A car is not a commodity. A car, even though you have a steering wheel and a brake and an accelerator, and some of them have a stick shift, they're not a commodity. Because you take a lot of time in looking for a car. Is it big enough to hold your family? Is it safe? What type of gas mileage does it get? How long do you think it's going to last? Nobody goes down to the car store and with a suitcase full of money and says, "Give me any car," on the parking lot. Because cars are not commodities. And I've been in business for the last 42 years. And in 42 years, I've never seen two business problems that were the same. So if no two business problems are the same, how do you treat them with commodity software? Software companies love commodity proprietary software because it's a relatively low investment for a huge payback. It's one of the reasons why Microsoft is one of the richest companies in the world. It's one of the reasons why Larry Ellison can fly airplanes and have large yachts. It's one of the reasons why Mark Zuckerberg is filthy rich at the age of 22. It's high profits and low investment. And they create jobs that are relatively few and typically not local to you. Brazil pirates about 84% of its desktop PC software. 84%. Vietnam pirates 96% of its desktop software. And the United States, the richest country in the world, or at least we were until about 3 years ago, we pirate about 34% of our software. And even with that, Brazil still sends about 1.5 billion US dollars every year to the United States to pay for the software that they don't pirate. Now imagine if you tightened up those laws, how much money you'd be shipping outside of Brazil to the United States for the software. And that's money that you don't have to pay programmers like you inside of Brazil. It means that you can't get a job writing the software you want to write. It means that you have no money to pay for local food, local housing, and pay local taxes. Because you're sending all of this money to Bill Gates and Larry Ellison. Believe me, there's only so much cachaça that Bill Gates is going to drink. Homer probably drinks a lot more. And production software is a lot like printing money. with a big difference. You don't have to be told how to use money. Most people know how to use money. Being a very small child, here's my money, you know, here's your change. Oh, thank you. But with software, it's different. And when you're stamping out this software and giving it out to millions of people, you need to have the other side of it, which is how do you help them use the software for their problem. And this is why when you sit on the telephone for hours at a time trying to get through to the support center, that all you get is, please press button number 1 for sales, button number 2 for support, boop. Please wait. Then you get music, music, and then you get disconnected. It's not because these companies don't want to give you good service, it's because they can't give you good service. They have too many customers with too many problems. But why do these people continue to make this software? Because it's in their best interest. And remember that phrase, their best interest, not your best interest. Now, a lot of these companies will say free software actually has a higher total cost of ownership than their proprietary software. They say, oh yes, you can pull the free software down off the net for free. You don't have good documentation that goes with it, and you don't have anybody you can go to ask questions about it. Therefore, the total cost of ownership is higher than ours. Recently, Microsoft commissioned a study that found out that the total cost of ownership of Linux was the same as the total cost of ownership of Microsoft Windows. However, the reason it was the same was because while you didn't pay the royalties to Microsoft for Linux, people who supported Linux, like system administrators, or people who would help you learn about Linux, or people that would fix problems for you, were charging more money than the people who supplied the same types of services for Microsoft. They were demanding more money. Why? Because they were scarcer. And the people that needed to use it had to pay them more money to get their services. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why is this bad? Microsoft, you're telling me that if you are a good Linux person, you actually make more money than a good Microsoft person. I don't see anything wrong with that. Do you? No, I don't think so. But it doesn't make any difference what total cost of ownership is, not the business. Because if you can't afford the solution in the first place, that's it, no problem. Whether you're buying free software or whether you're buying proprietary software. It doesn't make a difference about total cost of ownership, because what a business person is interested in is return on investment. I have $100 to invest in something. How much more money am I going to get back? Or if I invest that $100 to solve a problem, how much does that save me? That is what a good business person is about. And if you have two solutions that each cost $100, if this one gives you better return on investment than this one, you choose that one. It's very simple. So it is return on investment. Now, most people don't want products. Most people want service. I travel to New York City a lot, and having a car in New York City is the worst thing in the world. There's no place to park. You know, you can't find a gasoline station, and all the taxi cab drivers are out to get you. So what you want is a service of transportation. I come out of my brownstone in the morning. There is my stretch limousine waiting for me. The driver opens the door for me, says, "Yes, Mr. Hall, can I help you?" "Yes, we're going down to the World Trade Center, James." I get in the back, I have my notebook open, I'm typing away, Wi-Fi in the limousine. Stop in front of the World Trade Center, he gets out, he opens the door for me, I go inside, he takes care of the car, he fills it full of gas, and all I have to do is pay him money. It's a service of transportation. A lot of people like cooking food. I hate cooking food, despite that. But I like eating food. You know, some people like going to the store, buying all the food, taking it home, cooking it. They like doing that. I hate doing that. And I especially hate washing dishes. So I love it when I get the service of food. I go to the restaurant. "Oh, yes, Mr. Hall, how are you doing?" "Oh, Philippe, I my normal table." "Okay, Mr. Hall, right by the fireplace. Your glass of wine is already waiting for you. Thank you, sir." I order my food, I eat it, I walk away, somebody else cleans the dishes, I pay the money. The service of food. We need to think about making software do what people want it to. That's the difference. It's not a product that somebody thought I wanted. It's a service. But it's a highly trained and skilled service. It's kind of like a brain surgeon. A brain surgeon doesn't create a product. You don't end up with a second brain when they get finished. A brain surgeon does the service of fixing the brain you have, you know. And you don't go out looking for the brain surgeon who's going to do the surgery and say, "I do brain surgery cheap. I don't wash my hands in between brain surgeries. I used last year's X-ray machine." You don't look for that because your brain's important to you. And likewise, a businessman's business is important to them. So you want the best possible person helping you with your business. It's like a lawyer. God knows lawyers don't do anything. But we respect them for their knowledge and their ability, and they keep us out of trouble sometimes. Now, 80% of all the software written in the world is not prepackaged binary software. It's actually software written by systems administrators, software written by educators, software written by people trying to do a unique job. It just seems like packaged software is every place because it's packages. And people doing embedded systems, all these people. Now, what we have to do is convince them they're going to write this code in the first place. Why shouldn't they use an open source programmer? Why should they pay somebody who creates closed source proprietary code instead of paying somebody who produces open source code? Who cares? You know, you have your systems administration code that's, you know, looking at your log files. When you make a change to that, why shouldn't you redistribute that code back to the main project? If we change this, then you people will be the ones who will be hired into these positions because you will know how to leverage the world in helping you solve these problems. So here are the jobs that people do with closed source proprietary software. You can be a programmer. You can be a systems analyst who analyzes what has to be done, and then other programmers come in and do the programming. You could be a systems administrator or a product manager. Product managers talk to customers and figure out what the customer needs and the best business model for the software. Technical marketing manager, that's what my last position in digital was. I could understand the business and understand the technology and go in and explain to customers what the software would do for them. Teaching, I taught for a while. Consultant, that's what I do today. I go in and help people solve their problems, and they pay me money for it. An integrator, somebody who pulls together all the software projects and products and makes them work. The thing is, with open source, you could do every single one of these jobs, but you could do it better because you have access to the source code for the programs. And you can be a better teacher than the people that wrote the code. Because a lot of programmers can't communicate. A lot of programmers can't, think about the student. Maybe you have those talents, and you could look at the source code for the program and see how it works, and you could actually be a better teacher than the person who wrote the code. And you can charge for that capability. Now, I said I'm a consultant, and let's say I go into a company and I see a problem, and these blue circles are the problems that I see. Now, proprietary software is like a square peg. You can't change its shape or its size. It's a certain size and a certain shape, and that's it. So if I go out and buy a piece of proprietary software to solve my blue circle problem, it looks like that. So I go back to the store and I say, or the catalog or the website, and I say, I need another piece of code to fill up more of the blue space. And I go and I buy it, and there it is. Oh, I still have blue space. I go back again, I spend some more money, and some more money. And I'm like, this is getting boring, Oh! So I know what I'll do. I'm going to go and I'm going to get a really big piece of code, something like SAP or you're laughing, or PeopleSoft or some other one of those, or Oracle. Okay, I pay $100,000, $500,000 for the piece of code. There it is. But the problem is that the code is so big and so complex, I either need more computers or I need to train my people more. If it was free software, I'd have the source code, and what I could do is this. Make my code fit exactly what the problem is. And this saves time and money. Now, at the University of Utah, they needed to have a university management system. And they had set aside $10 million for it. There was a university in Australia who needed a system like that, and they had paid PeopleSoft $22 million, and it spent 5 years trying to get the system to work. It didn't. And PeopleSoft told them they'd have to spend another $5 million and another 3 years, and they would have a vanilla version of this, not even tailored to what they needed. So, compare that to Saigu, which was written here in Brazil. It was used by a Portuguese university. It used MySQL to store data. It used GNU plot to plot out student records. It used the printing mechanism to print it. It used all free software, and it did the job. And the university said, they have it on their website, and they were contacted by other universities in Brazil, and they said, can we use this software? Of course you can. Here it is. So the other universities didn't have to pay any money for their management software. And then they were contacted by a Spanish-speaking university in one of the other Latin American countries. Can we use your software? Of course, but it only works in Portuguese. That's okay, we'll make it work in Spanish. And now the software works in both Spanish and Portuguese. And the last I knew, there was a Japanese programmer living in Germany who was doing the English version. And it's now used in over 60 universities throughout Latin America. And it does exactly what they want. In Rio de Janeiro, there was a small company that was investigating the rainforest. And they needed a certain type of software to do this. It's known as Geographical Information Software, GIS. And the company that makes software, a lot of this software, is a company called Esri. And their software is very expensive. Very expensive. No, I mean really, really very expensive. 500,000 US dollars per copy. And the little company needed 9 copies. The little company had the 4.5 million US dollars, but the problem was that the software only worked in English. And all the people in this little company in Rio de Janeiro spoke Portuguese. Now, could you imagine people only being able to speak Portuguese? That's ridiculous. And the little company went to Esri and said, please, for $4.5 million, can you make a version that prompts in Portuguese? And Esri said, no. It's not in our best business interest. So the little company went to an open source developer and said, please, we don't need all of the Esri functionality. We just need this little bit. Could you do this for us? And the open source developer said, yes. I use Postgres as a database and OpenGIS as a project to get that information, GNU-plot to plot out the maps you need, and Perl to hold it together. And he did the project in 3 months and charged the little company $380,000. How many of you would like to get 380,000 US dollars for 3 months worth of work? Now, I add, he also charged them a little bit of money every month for a maintenance contract to keep the software up to date. Now, I told you this example to make a difference between total cost of ownership and return on investment. So I ask you, how much was this software worth? Some people might say that the software was worth $380,000 because that's what the programmer asked for it. But they would be wrong. Some people would say that the software was worth $4.5 million because that's what the little company would have had to pay Esri. But they would be wrong. The software was actually infinitely valuable because without it, the little company could not exist. And that was the return on investment that this little company had when they went to the open source developer. In St. Petersburg, there's a turbine test bed that tests steam turbines for efficiency. They have a series of sensors that are going throughout the turbine test bed to test pressure and power generated, things like that. There are 5 of these turbine test beds in the world. 4 of them use proprietary, extremely expensive software. But it's not just that the software is extremely expensive. The other problem is that any time you need a slight change to the software, it would take over a month for the company that made it to respond to it. And remember, this company only has 5 customers. So taking a month to respond to a customer is pretty bad. The one in St. Petersburg uses Linux as an operating system. It uses MySQL as a database to store the data. It uses GNU-plot to plot out the things that people want to see, and it uses to draw graphs showing where the sensors are put. I forgot to tell you that the real customers of these turbine test beds are engineers that are all over the world. With the internet, they can go to St. Petersburg and see how their turbines are performing. And if they need any changes to the software, the person in St. Petersburg can typically do the work overnight. So here we have total return on investment again. Because what is the worth of this software? It's not the fact that it tests the turbine, because both sets of software do that. But the real value of this, that it can be changed to meet the engineer's needs overnight. And that particular capability is invaluable. It is infinitely valuable. Sao Paulo subway system. The Sao Paulo subway system had a problem. It was very dirty, and the person that ran it had no money for subway cleaners. So he did know that they were using Microsoft Office to write letters. So he decided to use OpenOffice instead and take all of the money for paying for Microsoft Office and hire 17 subway cleaners. So the subways got noticeably cleaner, and all of a sudden people started coming to him and say, the subway is clean now, I'm going to encourage all of my friends to ride the subway. Subway ridership went up, which meant he had even more money to hire even more subway cleaners. He said, Maddog, in the total time I've been in this job, not one person has come to me and said, thank you for using Microsoft Office for writing your letters, because your letters look so crisp and clean. But they have come to me and said, thank you for making your subway cleaner, and I'm going to write it and tell all my friends to write it too. Caixa Econômica Federal was running the lottery system, and they were using proprietary program to do it. They were paying $1 million a month maintenance on that program. Of course, this is Caixa. They had the $1 million a month. They were running the lottery system. The $1 million a month was not a problem. What the problem was that to put in a new game would take 10 months to change the software. So they hired 3 open source developers to create an open source lottery system. I guarantee you those programmers did not make $1 million a month. And then they found out that they could make a new game in 3 weeks instead of 10 months. Do you know how much money is generated when you have a new lottery game 9 months and 1 week early? A lot of money. No. A lot of money. Another job you do, and I mentioned this before, is a value-added reseller. What you're doing is you're buying hardware and getting software and putting it together into a solution for your customer. That is your value added. That's what you should be charging for, the total solution. And you can use the total solution several times for several customers, just changing it each time that particular customer's needs. So you're getting a lot of the same leverage as you would with closed source proprietary software, but you're still tailoring it to the customer's needs. So when I first started in programming, I would go out to a customer, look at their facility, and say, how much do you pay for doing that every year? And the manager would say, he spends $2 million a year doing that particular thing. I said, I can automate that for you. How much would you pay me to do that? Well, we'll pay you $500,000 to automate that so we could save $2 million a year. That's when I would write my 12 lines of Perl code and give it to them and say, $500,000 please. And they say, wait a minute, you're only here for a day. You only wrote 12 lines of code. I says, yes, but you don't charge the brain surgeon for the 10 minutes they spend in the operating room. You charge them for the 38 years that they spent to learn where to make the incision. I have a friend of mine who lives in Germany. His name is Lucas, and he runs a security firm. He's an active member of Black Hat. And he came to me one day and said, John, I have so much business, it's not fun anymore. I don't have time to do the interesting things I like to study. I says, okay, Lucas, do you have people working for you? Yes, I have 5 people working for me. How much do you charge for a day of your consulting time? He says, I charge $1,000 a day. How much do you charge for your people? I charge $1,000 a day for each of them. I said, well, that's the beginning of your problem. You're the manager, you're the owner. You're looked at as being high value. If you charge the same amount for your time, charge for theirs, why should anybody want to have them working for them? They all want to have you. Lucas thought about that, said, okay. He says, what should I do? I said, you should charge $5,000 a day for your business, for your participation. And you should also raise your employees to $3,000 a day. He says, but if I do that, I won't have as much business. I said, but you don't need as much business. And now you'll have the time you need to do the fun things you like to do. Well, he took my advice. It's just it backfired a little bit. Because he raised his salary or his pay to $5,000 a day, people looked at it and says, he must be really good. And he had more business than ever. A company near my house in Nashua, New Hampshire, that had a huge proprietary source code program. And they were spending all their time putting it to different systems. They decided to make most of it open source and only charge for some small binary modules useful to very large companies. What happened was, when they gave away most of their code, which was very useful to people, they found out that more companies than ever started using this. It allowed them to lower their cost of sales, because instead of to advertise every place and make lots of calls, they would only call large companies that were downloading their code. It also lowered their support costs, because large companies that they were now targeting as customers had sophisticated systems administrators that wouldn't do silly things, and so they made more money than ever by using free software. Project.net was a closed source program that sold for $2,000 a copy. It is a project management software. They're only selling 2 copies a month, but they noticed that 60% of all of their customers bought training and a support contract, because Project.net was a very large, complex program. They decided to make it open source software, not charge for it, make all the source code available. And 2,000 people a month pulled down their software. 60% of them bought training and a support contract, and they made more money than ever. You have to know your business plan. I have a friend of mine who's a systems administrator, and he says, Maddog, I love free software, because every night I go home and sit on the couch with my wife, she watches TV, and I practice on my notebook, program on my notebook. At the end of the night, I ship my code up to the site with a project, and the next day I find out that 60,000 other people have been doing the same thing. It's like I talk in amplification system quietly, and out of the other side there comes a complete orchestra. This is the promise of free software. But you need to know how to price your work. When I was working for Digital Equipment Corporation, we had a clerk who had the responsibility of sending out updates to people who had support contracts and people who would buy certain pieces of software. By hand, they were comparing all this information. We estimated on the next release they were going to have to spend 5 years before they got all the updates out to all customers. I automated the process. It took me about half a day to write the code. And now, in 10 minutes, we got the same result as the clerk would over the next 5 years. The value of this was the fact that customers had their updates in a much more realistic time. What was this worth to my company? Millions of dollars. Not that the clerk would have been paid millions of dollars, but in customer satisfaction. I ran into a person here at FISL when I was talking to them about this, my talk today. He said, I used to write programs when I was a college student for a TI calculator. And a friend of my father came and heard what I was doing and said he wanted to buy my programs. And I said, oh, no, they're too simple. I'm not going to ask any money from you. His father said, sell him the programs. If somebody offers to pay you money for something, take it. It's okay. You make me feel better. Okay? If you don't take it, in effect, you devalue what you do. You are very valuable. Time is valuable. And maybe that money that they give you will allow you to go out and buy some beer. It's always easier to take a high price and discount it to nothing. You say, oh, how much are you worth, Mad Dog? I'm worth $50,000 a day. Oh, I can't afford that. Oh, I was just kidding. It's Tuesday. I'm worth $1,000 a day. It's much better. But still a little bit expensive. But it's the third Tuesday. You're really lucky. But if you start too low, it's hard to go up. Okay? So, lessons learned here. Know your business. Volume may not be everything, but it is key in a lot of places. And have a business plan. Know what you're going to be doing. Figure out how to make them so you can sustain yourself. What not to do. I had a friend of mine, well, not a friend, a person I met. He came up to me at a conference. He said, I came to the conference 2 years ago. I did exactly what you did, and I'm bankrupt. I said, what did you think I told you to do? Oh, I have to make all the software I write free software. So, great idea. I went to the bank, borrowed lots of money. I hired lots of engineers. I created the product, and I gave it away. And nobody paid me anything for it. I said, you didn't listen to me. I never told you to do that. Ever. And Richard Stallman has never told you to do that. This comes from another talk I've been doing lately about getting free university education. You have the capability of doing that now. All the information on the internet is free. You can get the information. All you need to do is think about how to approach the problem. And then once you've had the approach, you can then go in for certification or other methods of showing people that you actually know what you're doing. In summary, in order to be a good business person, you have to know both the technology and the business. You should learn from other free software projects to figure out how they are making money or sustaining themselves. Then you determine the business area you want to go to and figure out how you're going to make money. Either a product model or a service model, or maybe a combination of both. And then write your business plan and execute against that plan. You can always change your business plan. It's a living document. You can make changes to it as you go along. Without the business plan, you sometimes go adrift, and you haven't thought things completely through. Now, I'd like to do a very quick update on Project Kawa, because people are happy about it. Project Kawa, if you're not familiar with it, is about creating jobs. I believe I can create between 1 to 2 billion new high-tech jobs in Brazil, with another 1 to 2 billion high-tech jobs throughout the rest of Latin America. I hope that I could be able to employ people who are normally hard to employ. Single parents, people who are physically challenged. But I'm sure I can employ only two. We want to reduce the amount of electrical usage by desktop computers. We're going to be using thin clients that use 10 watts apiece, hooked to highly available server systems in the basement of tall buildings. We provide gratis, meaning free, wireless internet over large urban areas. So every place you go, you can pull out your Wi-Fi device, turn it on, and it will work without having to sign up for pay money or sign any terms of agreement. This is the way that God and Al Gore intended the internet to work. We'll also create a low-cost supercomputer grid to supply power for industry and government and schools, and all without government funding. Okay. Thin clients and the server systems. We do this by giving to you the business plan and the means to create your own job. You will be your own boss, work your own hours, and we feel we give you a good living right off the bat with even more money by you doing things that you like doing. You will be in effect a local ISP, and you'll be performing these types of services for your customers, as well as creating specialized applications for them. The presence of this is that the software is already done. The hardware is all commodity hardware, so there's nothing special that has to be created. We're going to start with our home entertainment and home automation center, made up of XBMC and certain other good bits that will go into it, with a world-class 8-channel amplifier, world-class speaker system for you to have a entertainment system. You will go out and sell these. We're going to select 50 people to go out and sell these. If you can sell only 10 of these every week, then you will have a very good living doing this. And then from there, we're going to expand this into the full-blown Project Kawa project. We've had some issues because we want to manufacture all of this inside of Brazil, and it's very hard to find manufacturers inside of Brazil that can handle both the volume and the quality that we want at the price point we want. But we're getting very close to that. We are also hiring a project manager to help coordinate this, and we're going to target for having our pilot ready to go by Latinoware in October. We'll be doing training there in Latinoware to start the pilot for Project Kawa. If you want more about it, you can go to www.projectkawa.com. I have to update the website. I'm sorry I haven't done that, but I've been busy. And I will update it with the current status so people can follow along. Thank you very much.